The ice on the front door handle cut into Nadia's palm as she tried to unlock her own home. Something was wrong. The porch light was off, and through the frosted windows she could see warm yellow light glowing inside her house. But why was it so quiet? Where were her mother and 5-year-old daughter, Zoe? Nadia had cut her business trip short by 2 days, wanting to surprise her family. The December cold bit through her coat as she fumbled with her keys. That's when she heard it, a small whimpering sound coming from the side of the house. Her heart stopped. There, huddled against the brick wall behind the bare rose bushes, were her mother and daughter. Zoe's lips were blue and she was shivering so hard she could barely speak. Her mother, 73-year-old Grace, was trying to keep Zoe warm with her own thin jacket, but both of them looked like they had been outside for hours. "Mommy?" Zoe cried when she saw Nadia, her little voice cracking from the cold. "Baby, what are you doing out here?" Nadia dropped her suitcase and scooped Zoe into her arms. The child's skin was ice cold. "Mama Grace, how long have you been outside?" "Since this morning," Grace whispered, her own lips trembling. "They said we couldn't come back in until you got home." Nadia's blood turned to fire even as her family shivered from the cold. "Who said that?" "Robert's mother. She said the house was too crowded with company over." "Company?" Nadia looked toward the warm lit windows of her home. Through the sheer curtains she could see figures moving around inside. She could hear laughter and music. A party was happening in her house while her mother and daughter nearly froze to death outside. "Come on, let's get you inside," Nadia said, trying to keep her voice calm for Zoe's sake. She used her key to unlock the front door and stepped into her own home. The warmth hit her face immediately, making the cold her family had endured feel even more cruel. The house smelled like expensive perfume and wine. In her living room she saw Robert's mother, Patricia, sitting on her couch like she owned the place. Robert's sister, Monica, was lounging in Nadia's favorite chair. And there, coming down the stairs in a red dress that Nadia had never seen before, was a woman she didn't recognize. The woman was tall, light-skinned, with long hair that clearly cost a fortune to maintain. She moved through Nadia's house like she belonged there, like she owned it. "Oh," Patricia said when she saw Nadia, not even bothering to stand up. "You're back early." "This is my house," Nadia said quietly, still holding Zoe, who was finally starting to stop shivering. "Why was my family locked outside?" "We didn't lock anyone out," Monica said, not looking up from her phone. "We just told them to wait outside until there was more room." "More room?" Nadia looked around her spacious living room. There were maybe 6 people total in a house that could easily fit 20. "Where's Robert?" The woman in the red dress smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "He's upstairs getting dressed. We're all going out for dinner." That's when Nadia understood. This wasn't just Robert's family visiting. This was his girlfriend, his mistress, and they had all been living in her house, playing house while she was away working to support the family. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Zoe whispered against Nadia's neck. "They said I couldn't eat until you came home." Nadia felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart that would come later. What broke was her patience, her willingness to give people the benefit of the doubt, her desire to keep peace in her family. "Go upstairs and run a warm bath for yourself and Grandma Grace," Nadia told Zoe gently. "I'll bring you some hot chocolate in a few minutes." As her daughter and mother headed upstairs, Nadia turned back to the group in her living room. They were all looking at her like she was the one who didn't belong. "I want all of you out of my house," Nadia said. Her voice was quiet, but something in it made Patricia finally stand up. "Now wait a minute." "Out." Nadia's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the room like ice. "Now." The woman in the red dress laughed. "You can't kick us out," Robert said. "Robert doesn't own this house." "I do. And you have 10 minutes to get your things and leave before I call the police." That's when Robert appeared at the top of the stairs. He was wearing an expensive suit that Nadia had never seen before, and his hair was styled differently. He looked like a different person. "Nadia, you're home early," he said, coming down the stairs like nothing was wrong. "We were just—" "I know exactly what you were doing," Nadia said. "I want them out. All of them." Robert's face hardened. "This is my house too." "No," Nadia said softly. "It's not." For the first time since she'd walked in, the room went completely quiet. Even the music from the speakers seemed to fade away. Everyone was looking at Nadia now, really looking at her, and something in her expression made them all take a step back. "I'll explain exactly whose house this is tomorrow," Nadia continued. "Tonight I want you all gone. And Robert? Pack a bag. You won't be staying here either." The woman in the red dress opened her mouth to say something, but Robert grabbed her arm. "Let's just go," he muttered. As they gathered their things, Nadia went to the kitchen to make hot chocolate for Zoe and Grace. Her hands were steady as she worked, but her mind was racing. She had trusted Robert with her family, her home, her life. And he had let his family terrorize her mother and daughter while he played house with another woman. But what hurt most wasn't the betrayal. It was the image of Zoe and Grace huddled in the cold, being told they couldn't come into their own home. It was the thought of how many nights this might have happened while she was away. As she stirred the hot chocolate, Nadia made a decision. This wasn't just about Robert cheating. This was about people who had shown no mercy to a child and an elderly woman. And people who showed no mercy deserved none in return. The front door slammed as the last of them left. Nadia carried the hot chocolate upstairs, where she found Zoe and Grace in the warm bathroom, finally safe. "Are they gone?" Grace asked. "Yes," Nadia said, helping Zoe into the warm bath. "They're gone. And they're never coming back." As she watched her daughter play with her bath toys, looking happy for the first time since Nadia had been home, she began to plan. Robert and his family thought they could treat her family like trash and face no consequences. They thought she would just accept it and move on. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The next morning, Nadia sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee, watching Zoe eat pancakes. Her daughter looked so much better after a warm night in her own bed, but Nadia could still see the fear in her eyes every time someone walked past the window. "Mama Grace," Nadia said gently when her mother joined them for breakfast, "I need you to tell me everything that happened while I was gone." Grace looked uncomfortable. She'd never been one to complain or cause trouble. "It wasn't that bad, honey. We managed." "Mama Grace, my daughter was blue from cold when I found her yesterday. Please tell me what happened." Grace sighed and sat down heavily. She looked older than her 73 years, and Nadia realized with a shock that she'd lost weight in the 2 weeks Nadia had been away. "It started the day after you left," Grace began slowly. "Robert's mother came over with that woman. Said they were going to stay for a few days. I didn't think much of it at first." "What woman?" Nadia asked, though she already knew. "The one in the red dress. Her name is Tiffany, I think. She's been sleeping in your bedroom with Robert." Nadia felt sick, but she kept her voice steady. "Go on." "Patricia started telling me I was doing everything wrong. The way I cooked, the way I cleaned, the way I took care of Zoe. She said Robert was tired of having to take care of his wife's family." "She said that in front of Zoe?" Grace nodded sadly. "Zoe asked me why Daddy's mommy didn't like us. I didn't know what to tell her." Nadia reached over and squeezed her mother's hand. "What else?" "They started making rules. We couldn't use the living room when they were watching TV. We couldn't cook when they wanted the kitchen. Yesterday, Patricia said the house was too crowded with their friends coming over, so we had to wait outside." "For how long?" "Since 8 in the morning. They said we could come back in when you got home." Nadia did quick math in her head. She'd found them at 6 in the evening. Her mother and daughter had been outside in 30-degree weather for 10 hours. "Did you eat anything yesterday?" Grace shook her head. "They said there wasn't enough food for everyone." Nadia felt rage building in her chest, but she kept it contained. She needed information, not emotion. "Did Robert know about this?" "He came home around noon and saw us outside. Tiffany came out and kissed him right there on the porch. She said something about how nice it was to have the house to themselves." "And he didn't say anything about you being outside?" "He looked at us," Grace said quietly. "But then he went inside with her." Nadia closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Zoe was looking at her with those big, serious eyes that no 5-year-old should have. "Mommy, are you sad?" Zoe asked. "No, baby. I'm just thinking. Are Daddy and his family going to come back?" "No," Nadia said firmly. "They're not coming back." After breakfast, Nadia sent Zoe to play in her room and asked Grace to tell her more. The picture that emerged made Nadia's blood boil. Robert had been seeing Tiffany for months. His family knew about it and approved, because Tiffany was light-skinned and came from a family with money. They had been planning for Robert to divorce Nadia and marry Tiffany instead. Patricia said that Robert deserved better than having to support a wife who was never home, and her family too, Grace told her. She said once Robert married Tiffany, we'd have to find somewhere else to live. "They said that in front of Zoe?" "Monica said it would be good for Zoe to have a new mommy who could stay home and take care of her properly." Nadia felt something cold settle in her stomach. They hadn't just been planning to replace her. They'd been planning to take her daughter too. "Mama Grace, did they ever hurt you or Zoe? Physically, I mean." Grace hesitated. "Monica pushed me once when I was too slow getting out of her way in the kitchen. And Patricia grabbed Zoe's arm pretty hard when she was crying for you. Did they leave marks? Zoe had finger marks on her arm for a few days. That was it. Nadia had heard enough. She spent the rest of the morning making phone calls. First to her job to extend her time off. Then to her lawyer to schedule an emergency meeting. Then to her bank to check on all their accounts. What she found made everything worse. Robert had been moving money out of their joint account. Large amounts transferred to an account she didn't recognize. Their savings account, which should have had $20,000 in it, now had less than $3,000. But Robert had made a mistake. The house, which he'd always assumed was in both their names, was actually only in Nadia's name. She'd bought it before they got married with money she'd inherited from her grandmother. The car he'd been driving was leased in her name. Even his credit cards were connected to her accounts. Robert had been stealing from her to fund his affair, not realizing that legally, almost everything belonged to her alone. Nadia smiled for the first time since coming home. She'd been supporting Robert for their entire marriage while he worked part-time jobs and complained about her travel schedule. He'd been living off her money while planning to replace her and throw her family out on the street. That afternoon, while Zoe napped and Grace rested, Nadia started making more calls. She called a locksmith to change all the locks on her house. She called the bank to remove Robert's access to all accounts. She called the credit card companies to cancel his cards. Then she called a private investigator. "I need evidence of an affair," she told him. "Photos, documents, anything that will hold up in court." "How soon do you need it?" "Yesterday," Nadia said. Money is no object. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Robert. "We need to talk. I'm coming over tonight." Nadia texted back. "The locks have been changed. You're not welcome here." Her phone immediately started ringing. She let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was Robert, angry now, demanding that she let him in his own house. He said she was being dramatic and that they needed to work things out like adults. Nadia deleted the message and blocked his number. By evening she had a plan. It would take time to execute, but she had patience. Robert and his family had spent months planning to destroy her life. She would spend the next few months returning the favor. But first she had to make sure Zoe and Grace were safe and happy. They'd been through enough. "What do you want for dinner, baby?" she asked Zoe. "Can we have pizza? And can we watch movies together?" Of course. As they sat on the couch that night, eating pizza and watching cartoons, Nadia felt a peace she hadn't experienced in months. Her house was quiet and safe. Her family was warm and fed. And tomorrow she would begin the process of making sure it stayed that way. Robert had made the mistake of thinking she was weak because she was kind. His family had made the mistake of thinking they could abuse her family because she wasn't there to protect them. They were all about to learn the difference between kindness and weakness. And they were going to learn it the hard way. Nadia woke up before dawn on her third day home. She'd barely slept, her mind running through plans and possibilities. But today she would start gathering the evidence she needed to destroy the people who had hurt her family. She made coffee in her quiet kitchen and opened her laptop. First, she needed to understand exactly what Robert had been doing with their money. The bank statements painted a clear picture. For the past 6 months, Robert had been making regular transfers to an account belonging to Tiffany Reynolds. He'd also been using their joint credit card at expensive restaurants, hotels, and jewelry stores. The charges were always on days when Nadia was traveling for work. He'd spent over $15,000 on his affair. Money that was supposed to be for Zoe's college fund and Grace's medical expenses. Nadia printed everything and put it in a folder marked Financial Evidence. Next, she logged into Robert's email account. He'd never changed the password from when they'd shared a computer years ago, and he wasn't smart enough to think she might check it. What she found made her sick. There were months of emails between Robert and Tiffany, planning their future together. Robert had told Tiffany that he was going to divorce Nadia and that Tiffany could move into the house permanently. He'd promised her that they could get rid of the old lady and the kid once the divorce was final. But the worst emails were between Robert and his family. They had been planning this for nearly a year. Patricia had found Tiffany through a friend at her church and introduced her to Robert. Monica had been coaching Robert on how to hide assets before the divorce. One email from Patricia to Robert made Nadia's hands shake with rage. "Make sure you document every time Nadia travels for work. We can use that to prove she's an unfit mother who abandons her child. With your mother and sister as witnesses, we can get full custody of Zoe and child support payments. Tiffany will be a much better mother anyway." They had been planning to take her daughter. Nadia printed everything and added it to her evidence folder. Then she forwarded all the emails to her own account before Robert could think to delete them. By the time Zoe and Grace woke up, Nadia had gathered enough evidence to destroy Robert and his family in court. But she wasn't done yet. "Good morning, beautiful girls," she said, making pancakes for breakfast. She was determined to make sure her family felt safe and loved while she planned her war. After breakfast, Nadia called her private investigator. "I need you to follow Robert Morrison and Tiffany Reynolds," she told him. "I need photos of them together and I need to know where they're staying." "Already on it," he said. "I got some good shots of them at dinner last night. And they're staying at the Marriott downtown. Room 412. On whose credit card? That's the interesting part. It's on a card belonging to Patricia Morrison, Robert's mother. So Patricia was funding her son's affair." Nadia made a note to look into Patricia's finances later. "Keep following them," she said. "I need everything." Next, Nadia called her lawyer, Thomas Wright. She'd used him when she bought her house, and she trusted him to be aggressive when needed. "I need to file for divorce," she told him. "And I need full custody of my daughter." "What are the grounds?" Nadia spent an hour telling him everything. When she finished, Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "This is bad," he said finally. "What they did to your mother and daughter could constitute child endangerment and elder abuse." "Can we use that?" "Oh yes. But Nadia, I need to ask you something. Are you sure you want to go nuclear on this? Divorce can be messy, but what you're describing could destroy their lives completely." Nadia thought about Zoe's blue lips and Grace's frightened eyes. "They tried to destroy my life and hurt my family," she said. "I want them to face consequences. Then let's give them consequences." That afternoon, while Zoe played in the backyard and Grace napped, Nadia did more research. She looked up property records and found that Patricia and her husband owned 3 rental properties in town. All of them had mortgages that were behind on payments. She looked up Robert's employment records and found that he'd been written up twice at his job for attendance issues. Apparently, he'd been calling in sick to spend time with Tiffany. She looked up Tiffany on social media and found photos of her wearing jewelry that Nadia recognized from their credit card statements. Expensive earrings, a diamond bracelet, a designer watch. All paid for with money stolen from Nadia's accounts. But the most interesting thing she found was a post on Monica's Facebook page from 3 weeks ago. It was a photo of Monica, Patricia, and Tiffany at a restaurant with the caption, "Celebrating our future daughter-in-law. Robert picked a winner this time." The post had dozens of comments from friends and family, all congratulating Robert on his upgrade and saying how much better Tiffany was for him than his current wife. Nadia screenshot everything. That evening her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello. This is Tiffany." The voice was cold and angry. "We need to talk." "No," Nadia said simply. "We don't. Look, I don't want any trouble. Robert and I are together now and you need to accept that. The only thing I need to accept is that you're a woman who sleeps with married men and helps abuse children. I never abused anyone. You were there when my daughter was locked outside in freezing weather. You said nothing. You did nothing. In my book, that makes you just as guilty." Tiffany was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different. "Scared. What do you want?" "I want you to stay away from my family. And I want Robert to stay away from my family. That's not going to happen. Robert is filing for divorce and we're going to fight for custody of Zoe. She deserves a mother who's actually around." Nadia felt that cold anger settle in her chest again. "Let me make something very clear," she said quietly. "You will never, ever be Zoe's mother. And if you try to take my daughter from me, I will destroy you and everyone who helps you. You can't threaten me." That wasn't a threat. That was a promise. Nadia hung up and blocked the number. She looked out the window at Zoe playing in the backyard, laughing as she chased butterflies. Her daughter was happy and safe now. But Tiffany's call had reminded her that the war was just beginning. Robert and his family thought they held all the cards because they had planned this for so long. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated her. Nadia opened her laptop and began typing an email to every person who had commented on Monica's Facebook post about the future daughter-in-law. She attached screenshots of the bank statements showing how Robert had funded his affair, and copies of the emails where the family had planned to abuse Grace and Zoe. The subject line read, "The truth about Robert Morrison's upgrade." She hit send to all 57 people at once. Then she sat back and waited for the storm to begin. Nadia's phone started buzzing at 7 in the morning. Text after text from numbers she didn't recognize, All from people who had received her email about Robert's affair and his family's treatment of Grace and Zoe. Most of the messages were supportive. "I can't believe they did this to you and your family," and "I'm so sorry you went through this." But a few were from people defending Robert, saying she was being vindictive. Those messages just made her more determined. She was drinking coffee and reading the responses when Thomas Wright called. "I got your email with all the evidence," he said. "This is even worse than you told me yesterday. Are you sure all of this is accurate?" "Every word. I have bank statements, emails, photographs, and witnesses." "Good. I'm filing for divorce today, and I'm requesting an emergency custody hearing. What they did to your mother and daughter constitutes clear child endangerment." "How long will it take?" "With this much evidence? We should have a hearing within 2 weeks. But Nadia, you need to be prepared. Robert's going to fight dirty. Men like him don't like losing control." As if on cue, Nadia's doorbell rang. She looked out the window and saw Robert standing on her porch with Patricia and Monica. They all looked angry. "Thomas, they're here," she said quietly. "Do not let them in. If they threaten you in any way, call the police immediately." Nadia hung up and went to the front door. She didn't open it, but spoke through it loudly enough for them to hear. "You need to leave my property." "This is my house too," Robert shouted. "You can't keep me out." "Actually, I can. This house is in my name only. You have no legal right to be here." Patricia's voice cut through the door like a blade. "You think you're so smart, don't you? We'll see how smart you are when we take Zoe away from you." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," Monica chimed in. "We have witnesses who will testify that you're never home, that you abandon your child for work." Nadia smiled grimly. They had no idea what was coming for them. "I have witnesses too," she said calmly. "Witnesses who will testify that you locked a 5-year-old child outside in 30-degree weather for 10 hours. That you denied food to a child and an elderly woman. That you physically abused them." The shouting outside stopped suddenly. "That's not what happened," Robert said, but his voice was quieter now. "I have evidence, Robert. Photos, medical records, witness statements. Your family committed child endangerment and elder abuse. Those are felonies." She heard Patricia and Monica whispering urgently to Robert. "We'll see you in court," Robert finally said. "Yes, you will." After they left, Nadia called the private investigator. "I need you to expand your surveillance," she told him. "I want to know everything about Patricia Morrison and Monica Morrison. Where they work, who they owe money to, any secrets they're hiding." "I'm already on Patricia," he said. "She's 3 months behind on the mortgage for her rental properties. And there's something interesting about her employment. She works as a bookkeeper for a small construction company, but the owner has been asking questions about missing money." "Missing money?" "About $5,000 over the past 6 months. Same time frame as when Robert's affair started." Nadia felt a piece of the puzzle click into place. Patricia's been stealing money to fund Robert's affair. "Looks that way. Want me to dig deeper?" "Absolutely." That afternoon, Nadia had another visitor. This time it was Tiffany, alone. Nadia opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What do you want?" Tiffany looked nervous, fidgeting with her expensive purse. "I want you to know that I didn't know about your mother and daughter being locked outside. But you were there." "I was upstairs. I didn't know what was happening." Nadia studied her face. Tiffany might be telling the truth about not knowing, but it didn't matter. "Even if I believed that, which I don't, you're still sleeping with a married man and helping to break up a family. Robert said you two were already separated. He said you didn't love him anymore." "Robert lied to you. We were never separated. I never said I didn't love him. I was just working to support our family while he was planning to replace me." Tiffany's face crumpled. "He said you guys had been having problems for years. The only problem we had was that I was traveling for work to pay our bills while he was cheating on me with you." Tiffany was crying now. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But you know now. So what are you going to do about it?" "I can't just leave him. I love him." "You love a man who let his family abuse a child and an elderly woman while he was upstairs with you. Think about what that says about his character." Tiffany wiped her eyes. "His family hates me anyway. Patricia keeps saying I'm not good enough for him because I don't have a college degree." This was interesting. Robert's family was already turning on their chosen replacement. "Why are you really here, Tiffany?" "Because I'm scared. Robert keeps talking about getting custody of Zoe, but he doesn't even like kids. He complains about her constantly. And Patricia keeps making plans for how we're going to live, but none of it makes sense without your money." "What do you mean?" "Robert doesn't make enough to support a family. Neither do I. Patricia keeps talking about the child support you'll have to pay and how we can use that to live better. So that was their real plan. They didn't want Zoe because they loved her. They wanted her for the money. Tiffany, do you understand that what they did to my family is illegal? That they could all go to prison? Tiffany's eyes widened. Prison? Child endangerment, elder abuse, theft. These are serious crimes. I didn't steal anything. You accepted stolen gifts. The jewelry Robert gave you was bought with money he stole from me. That makes you an accessory. Tiffany went pale. She looked at her expensive earrings and bracelet like they were burning her skin. What do you want me to do? I want you to tell the truth. In court, under oath. I want you to testify about what really happened. They'll hate me forever. They already don't respect you. And after this all comes out, they'll blame you anyway. You might as well be on the right side. Tiffany stood there for a long moment thinking. Finally she nodded. If I testify for you, will you help me stay out of trouble? I really didn't know about the money. If you tell the truth and return the jewelry, I won't press charges against you. Okay. But I need time to figure out how to get away from them safely. After Tiffany left, Nadia called Thomas Wright again. I think we just got our star witness, she told him. Robert's girlfriend is willing to testify against him? She's scared and she's starting to realize she's been used. She doesn't want to go down with the ship. This keeps getting better. I've been looking into Patricia Morrison's finances too. She's in deep financial trouble. If we can prove she stole money from her employer to fund her son's affair, she could be looking at prison time. Good. What about Monica? She's been posting on social media about how they're going to upgrade Robert's life. Screenshots of those posts will show premeditation. This wasn't a spontaneous affair, it was a planned attack on your marriage and family. That evening, Nadia sat on the couch with Zoe and Grace watching a movie and eating popcorn. For the first time in days, both of them looked truly relaxed. Mommy, Zoe said during a commercial, are the mean people going to come back? No, baby. They're never going to hurt you again. Promise? I promise. And she meant it. Robert and his family had declared war on her family, thinking she was too weak to fight back. But they had picked the wrong woman to mess with. The legal web she was weaving around them would ensure that they faced consequences for every cruel thing they had done. And by the time she was finished, they would understand that hurting her family was the biggest mistake of their lives. 2 weeks after filing for divorce, Nadia sat in the courthouse waiting for their first hearing. Thomas Wright had prepared her well for what to expect, but she still felt nervous energy coursing through her veins. Robert arrived with a lawyer she didn't recognize, a young man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Patricia and Monica flanked them, both dressed like they were going to church, trying to look respectable. Tiffany was nowhere to be seen. The hearing was scheduled to address temporary custody arrangements and emergency financial orders. Judge Sarah Coleman, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the case files before calling them to order. This is a preliminary hearing regarding Morrison versus Morrison, she announced. I've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties, and I have some serious concerns. Robert's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client is seeking joint custody of his daughter and fair division of marital assets. Mr. Peterson, Judge Coleman said coldly, your client is accused of child endangerment, elder abuse and financial theft. Before we discuss custody, I want to address the allegations that a 5-year-old child was locked outside in freezing weather for 10 hours. Robert's face went red. That's not what happened, Your Honor. Then explain to me what did happen. Robert stammered through an explanation that made no sense. He claimed Grace and Zoe had chosen to wait outside, that they weren't actually locked out, that it was all a misunderstanding. Thomas Wright stood up. Your Honor, we have photographic evidence of the child's condition when Mrs. Morrison found her, medical records documenting signs of cold exposure, and witness testimony. From whom? Miss Tiffany Reynolds, who was present during the incident. Robert's lawyer looked shocked. Your Honor, Miss Reynolds is my client's friend. She would never testify against him. Actually, Thomas said smoothly, Miss Reynolds has agreed to cooperate fully with our investigation in exchange for immunity from prosecution for receiving stolen goods. The color drained from Robert's face. Patricia grabbed Monica's arm, both of them whispering frantically. Judge Coleman reviewed more documents. Mr. Morrison, I also see evidence that you transferred significant amounts of money from joint accounts without your wife's knowledge or consent. $15,000 over 6 months. Can you explain these transfers? Those were business expenses. Business expenses to someone named Tiffany Reynolds? The same woman who's now testifying against you. Robert's lawyer was frantically taking notes, clearly unprepared for any of this. Your Honor, Thomas continued, we're also pursuing criminal charges against Mrs. Patricia Morrison for embezzlement from her employer. The stolen funds were used to support her son's extramarital affair. Patricia shot to her feet. That's a lie. Ma'am, you'll sit down and remain quiet or I'll have you removed from my courtroom, Judge Coleman snapped. The judge reviewed more evidence for several long minutes. When she looked up, her expression was thunderous. Mr. Morrison, based on the evidence presented, I'm granting Mrs. Morrison temporary full custody of the minor child. You will have no unsupervised visitation rights until this matter is resolved. Your Honor, that's not fair. Robert protested. What's not fair is a child being left outside in 30-degree weather while her father entertained his girlfriend. Mrs. Morrison, I'm also granting you exclusive use of the marital home and all vehicles. Mr. Morrison, you have 24 hours to collect your personal belongings under police supervision. Robert looked like he'd been slapped. Where am I supposed to live? That's not this court's concern. I'm also freezing all marital assets pending investigation of the financial theft allegations. This hearing is adjourned. As they left the courthouse, Nadia could hear Patricia screaming at Robert in the parking lot. How could you be so stupid? That girl was supposed to be on our side. I didn't know she would turn on me. Robert shouted back. Thomas Wright smiled as they walked to their car. That went better than expected. What happens next? Robert's going to scramble to find a new strategy. His family's going to panic. And we're going to keep building our case. That afternoon, Nadia's private investigator called with news. Patricia Morrison was fired today, he reported. Her employer found evidence of embezzlement going back 6 months. They're pressing charges. What about Monica? She's interesting. Turns out she's been bragging on social media about how they were going to get rid of the dead weight in Robert's life. She posted photos of herself in your house, sitting in your chair, calling it practice for when we own this place. She posted photos of herself in my house? Multiple photos, including some with Tiffany calling her sister-in-law. The timestamps show they were posted while you were traveling for work and while your mother and daughter were being mistreated. This was perfect. Monica had documented their plan in real time, proving premeditation. That evening, Nadia got a call from Tiffany. They know I'm testifying for you, Tiffany said, her voice shaking. What happened? Patricia came to my apartment screaming at me. She said I was a traitor and that I'd ruined everything. Monica was with her, and she said they were going to make sure everyone in town knew what kind of person I really was. Are you safe? I think so. But Robert keeps calling me, begging me to change my mind. He says if I testify against him, he'll never forgive me. Tiffany, he used you. He stole money from his wife to buy you gifts, and he let his family abuse a child while you were in the house. Do you really want to protect someone like that? There was a long pause. No, she said finally. I don't. I thought he loved me. He loved what you represented. A way to hurt his wife and upgrade his life. But he never loved you for who you are. 2 days later, Nadia's trap sprung perfectly. Monica, furious about the court hearing and desperate to salvage their plan, made a crucial mistake. She created a fake social media account and began posting lies about Nadia online. She claimed that Nadia was an abusive mother who abandoned her child for work. She posted that Grace was a burden who should be in a nursing home. She even claimed that Nadia had been having affairs of her own. But Monica was too angry to be careful. She used the same phone to create the fake account that she used for her real social media. And she made the post from her home IP address. Nadia's private investigator traced everything back to Monica within hours. This is perfect, Thomas Wright said when Nadia showed him the evidence. Not only does this prove harassment and defamation, but it shows their true character. Monica just destroyed any sympathy a jury might have had for their family. Can we use this in the divorce proceedings? Absolutely. And we can add a harassment lawsuit against Monica personally. That night, Nadia sat in her peaceful home with Zoe and Grace. They were building a puzzle together, something they'd never had time for when Robert and his chaos filled the house. Mommy, I like it better when it's just us, Zoe said quietly. Me too, baby. Are we going to stay together forever? Forever and always. Grace smiled and squeezed Nadia's hand. You're a good mother, honey. Don't let anyone tell you different. Looking at her family happy, safe, and healing, Nadia felt a deep satisfaction. Robert and his family had tried to break them apart, but all they'd done was make them stronger. And the best part was, Robert's family still had no idea how completely they'd walked into her trap. They thought they were fighting a desperate woman trying to save her marriage. They didn't realize they were fighting a strategic mastermind who was systematically destroying their lives piece by piece. The trap was set and they'd sprung it themselves. 3 weeks after the courthouse hearing, Nadia received the call she'd been waiting for. "It's done," her private investigator said. Patricia Morrison was arrested this morning for embezzlement. The evidence was overwhelming. Nadia felt a surge of satisfaction. What about Monica's harassment case? The police have all the evidence of the fake social media accounts and defamation. They'll be issuing a warrant for her arrest by tomorrow. And Robert? He's staying at a cheap motel on the south side of town. Tiffany kicked him out of her apartment 3 days ago when she realized he had no money left. Everything was falling into place exactly as Nadia had planned. That afternoon she got an unexpected visitor. It was Tiffany, but she looked completely different. Gone were the expensive clothes and perfect hair. She looked tired, scared, and much younger than before. "Can I come in?" Tiffany asked quietly. Nadia hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. They sat in the living room where Tiffany had once acted like she owned the place. Now she seemed to shrink into the furniture. "I wanted to apologize," Tiffany began. "For everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." "Why now?" "Because I finally understand what they did to your family. And what they did to me too." Tiffany pulled out a small jewelry box. "These are all the things Robert gave me. I know they were bought with money stolen from you." Nadia looked at the expensive earrings, bracelet, and necklace. "Why are you returning them now?" "Because I realized something. After Patricia got arrested and Robert ran out of money, none of them wanted anything to do with me anymore. Patricia called me yesterday and said it was all my fault for being a bad influence on Robert. So you finally see how they really feel about you. They never cared about me. I was just a tool they used to hurt you." Tiffany wiped her eyes. "Robert actually told me yesterday that if I hadn't been so needy and expensive, none of this would have happened. I'm sorry they used you, but that doesn't excuse what you helped them do to my family." "I know. That's why I'm going to tell everything in court. Not because you're making me, but because it's the right thing to do." After Tiffany left, Nadia called Thomas Wright with an update. "The pieces are falling perfectly," he said. "Patricia's arrest made the local news. Monica's harassment charges will be filed tomorrow. And Robert's employer called. Apparently he's been missing work because of all the stress, and they're considering firing him." "What about the financial investigation?" "We've recovered most of the stolen money. And because Robert used joint credit cards for the affair expenses, he's liable for all of it. With Patricia unable to help him financially anymore, he's looking at bankruptcy." That evening Nadia's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but when she answered, she heard Patricia's voice. "This is all your fault," Patricia hissed. "My life is ruined because of you." "Your life is ruined because you committed crimes?" Nadia replied calmly. "I was just trying to help my son find happiness." "You were trying to help your son steal my life and abuse my family. There's a difference. Robert deserves better than you. He deserves a wife who stays home and takes care of him properly. Robert deserves exactly what he's getting, consequences for his choices. We'll fight this. We'll prove you're lying about everything. Patricia, you were arrested based on evidence from your own computer. Your employer has documentation of every dollar you stole. And your daughter posted evidence of your plan all over social media. What exactly are you going to fight?" The line went quiet for a moment. "I'll make sure you never see Zoe again," Patricia finally said. "Actually, you'll never see Zoe again. The restraining order I filed today prohibits you from coming within 500 feet of my daughter or my mother." Patricia started screaming profanities, but Nadia had already hung up. The next morning brought even better news. Monica had been arrested at her job, led away in handcuffs while her co-workers watched. The local newspaper ran a story about the harassment case, complete with screenshots of the fake social media posts. But the best news came from an unexpected source. Robert's employer called to inform Nadia that Robert had been fired for excessive absences and unprofessional behavior. Apparently, he'd been calling in sick regularly to deal with his legal troubles, and when he did show up, he spent his time on the phone arguing with lawyers and family members. "Mrs. Morrison," his former boss said, "I want you to know that Robert had been telling people at work that he was planning to divorce you and take custody of your daughter for the money. It made everyone here very uncomfortable. Thank you for letting me know. He also owes the company money. He took several advances on his paycheck over the past few months and never repaid them. We're planning to garnish any future wages he might earn. So Robert was now unemployed, broke, facing multiple lawsuits, and abandoned by his family and girlfriend. Exactly where Nadia wanted him. That afternoon she took Zoe and Grace out for ice cream to celebrate. As they sat in the sunshine watching Zoe laugh and play, Nadia felt a deep peace. "You look happy, honey," Grace observed. "I'm happy. For the first time in months I feel like we're safe." What's going to happen to Robert and his family? They're going to face the consequences of their actions. Patricia will probably go to prison for embezzlement. Monica will have to pay damages for harassment and defamation. And Robert will lose everything he thought he was entitled to. Do you think they've learned their lesson? Nadia watched Zoe chase butterflies, carefree and joyful. "I don't care if they've learned anything. I just care that they can never hurt us again." That night, as she tucked Zoe into bed, her daughter asked a question that showed how much healing had already taken place. "Mommy, when I grow up, will I be strong like you?" "You're already strong, baby. Stronger than you know. Will you teach me how to protect people I love?" "Every day," Nadia promised. "Every single day." As she turned off the lights and headed to her own room, Nadia reflected on how far they'd come. 3 weeks ago, her family had been terrorized and abused. Tonight they were safe, happy and free. Robert and his family had thought they were clever, planning their attack for months while she was away working. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They'd underestimated her love for her family and her ability to fight back. The first strike had been devastating. But Nadia wasn't done yet. The collapse came faster than even Nadia had anticipated. 2 months after Patricia's arrest, she pled guilty to embezzlement to avoid a longer prison sentence. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in county jail and ordered her to pay full restitution to her former employer. Monica's harassment case resulted in a hefty fine and community service, plus a permanent restraining order that prevented her from contacting Nadia's family. But the real damage to Monica came from her reputation. The local newspaper's coverage of her fake social media accounts and hateful posts made her unemployable in their small town. But it was Robert's downfall that gave Nadia the most satisfaction. "His lawyer wants to settle," Thomas Wright told her during a meeting in his office. "They're offering to give you everything you want in exchange for you not pursuing the criminal charges for theft." "What are they offering?" "Full custody of Zoe, the house, all marital assets and monthly alimony payments for 5 years. Plus Robert would be responsible for all legal fees." "And what would he get?" "Visitation rights with Zoe twice a month, supervised by a court-appointed guardian." Nadia considered this. "What about the criminal charges?" "That's up to you. The district attorney has enough evidence to convict him of theft and fraud. He could go to prison for 2 to 5 years." "I want to think about it." That evening, Nadia sat on her porch watching Zoe play in the yard. Her daughter had blossomed over the past 2 months. She was laughing more, sleeping better, and had stopped asking when Daddy was coming home. Grace joined her on the porch with 2 cups of tea. "You're thinking about the settlement offer," Grace said. "How did you know?" "You get that look when you're making important decisions. The same look you had when you decided to buy this house." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Zoe catch fireflies. "What do you think I should do?" Nadia asked. "That depends. Do you want revenge or do you want peace?" "What's the difference?" "Revenge would be sending Robert to prison and making sure he loses everything forever. Peace would be taking the settlement and moving on with our lives." Nadia thought about this. "What do you want?" Grace smiled. "I want what's best for Zoe. And what's best for Zoe is having a mother who's happy and free to move forward, not tied up in years of legal battles." The next morning, Nadia called Thomas Wright. "I'll take the settlement," she said. "But I have additional conditions." "What conditions?" "I want Robert to sign a document admitting to everything he did. The affair, the financial theft, allowing his family to abuse Grace and Zoe. I want it all documented." "Why?" "Because if he ever tries to claim he was the victim, if he ever tries to turn Zoe against me when she's older, I want proof of what really happened." "Done. Anything else?" "I want Patricia and Monica prohibited from any contact with Zoe, ever. No birthday cards, no Christmas presents, no attempts to see her when she's with Robert. That's reasonable given their behavior. And I want Robert to pay for family therapy for Zoe and Grace to help them process the trauma his family caused. I'll add it to the agreement." 1 week later, they met at the courthouse to sign the final divorce papers. Robert looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his hair was greasy, and his clothes looked like he'd slept in them. His new lawyer, a public defender since he could no longer afford private counsel, quickly reviewed the settlement terms. Mr. Morrison, do you understand that by signing this agreement, you're admitting to adultery, theft, and child endangerment? Robert nodded miserably. And you understand that you're giving up all claims to the marital home, vehicles, and savings accounts? Another nod. And you agree to pay alimony of $1,500 per month for 5 years? How am I supposed to pay that? Robert asked. I don't even have a job. That's not this court's concern, Judge Coleman said sharply. You should have thought about that before you stole from your wife to fund an affair. Robert signed the papers with shaking hands. As they left the courthouse, Robert tried to approach Nadia. Nadia, please, can we talk? We have nothing to talk about. I made mistakes, but you didn't have to destroy my whole life. Nadia stopped walking and turned to face him. Robert, I didn't destroy your life. You destroyed your own life when you chose to betray your family. I lost everything. No, you lost things that were never really yours. This house was mine before we got married. The savings account was money I earned. The cars were leased in my name. You never actually owned any of it. But my family... Your family tried to abuse my child and my mother. They tried to steal my life and give it to another woman. They chose their path just like you chose yours. Robert's face crumpled. I know I hurt you, but I never meant for things to go this far. You meant every bit of it. You just thought you wouldn't get caught. Please, can't we work something out? For Zoe's sake. We did work something out. It's called a custody agreement. You can see your daughter twice a month under supervision. That's more than you deserve. Supervised visitation? I'm her father. You're a man who let his family terrorize his daughter while he was upstairs with his girlfriend. You lost the right to be trusted with her. That afternoon, Nadia took Zoe and Grace out for a celebration dinner. As they sat in their favorite restaurant, Zoe asked a question that showed how much she'd grown. Mommy, is Daddy going to be okay? What do you mean, sweetheart? He looked sad today. Nadia chose her words carefully. Daddy made some bad choices and now he has to face the consequences. But he'll be okay eventually. Do you think he's sorry? I think he's sorry he got caught. I don't know if he's sorry he hurt us. Are you happy he's gone? Nadia looked at her daughter's serious little face. I'm happy that we're safe. I'm happy that no one can hurt you or Grandma Grace anymore. And I'm happy that we can move forward with our lives. Me too, Zoe said and went back to eating her ice cream. That night, after Zoe was asleep, Nadia sat in her living room with Grace, finally allowing herself to fully process what had happened. It's really over, Grace said. It's really over. How do you feel? Nadia thought about it. Free. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. No regrets. None. Robert and his family showed me exactly who they were. They chose to be cruel to people who couldn't defend themselves. They chose to try to steal a life that didn't belong to them. They chose to hurt a child to get what they wanted. And now they're facing the consequences. Grace reached over and squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you, honey. You fought for your family when we needed you most. I'll always fight for my family. Always. Outside, a summer storm was beginning, lightning flashing across the sky. But inside their home, Nadia and Grace felt only peace. The house of cards that Robert and his family had built on lies and cruelty had finally collapsed. And from the wreckage, Nadia had built something better, a life based on truth, love, and justice. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Nadia received a call that put the final nail in Robert's coffin. Mrs. Morrison? This is Detective Ryan Collins with the Fraud Division. We need to speak with you about additional charges against your ex-husband. What kind of charges? Identity theft and credit fraud. It appears Robert Morrison has been using your social security number to open new credit accounts since your divorce. Nadia felt that familiar cold anger settle in her chest. Even after losing everything, Robert was still trying to steal from her. How much are we talking about? About $8,000 across 3 different credit cards. The credit card companies flagged it because the spending patterns were similar to the fraud from your marriage. What happens now? We need you to come in and file a formal complaint. This is a felony offense. If convicted, he could face up to 10 years in prison. That afternoon, Nadia sat in the police station filing her complaint against Robert. As she reviewed the evidence, she saw that he'd been using her information to try to rebuild his life, renting apartments, buying a car, even applying for jobs. The interesting thing, Detective Collins explained, is that he wasn't very careful about it. He used your name and social security number, but his own address and phone number. It's like he thought he was still entitled to use your identity. That's exactly what he thought. Well, he's about to learn otherwise. We have more than enough evidence to prosecute. When Nadia got home, she found Grace and Zoe in the kitchen baking cookies. The sight of them happy and safe in their own home reminded her of how far they'd all come. "How was your day, Mommy?" Zoe asked, flower in her hair. "Productive," Nadia said, hugging her daughter close. That evening, Thomas Wright called with updates on Robert's situation. "The identity theft charges are just the beginning," he said. "Apparently, Robert's been telling people around town that the divorce was unfair, that you lied about him in court. Defamation? Possibly. But here's the interesting part, he's been saying these things to potential employers and landlords. He's essentially blacklisted himself in this town." "Good. There's more. Remember Patricia's restitution payments for the embezzlement? She's been trying to pay them with money from Robert. But since Robert doesn't have any legitimate income, the court is questioning where that money is coming from." "You think she knows about the identity theft?" "I think the whole family has been involved in helping Robert try to rebuild his life illegally. And that's going to come back to bite all of them." 2 weeks later, the final pieces of Robert's downfall clicked into place. Patricia was arrested again, this time for conspiracy to commit fraud. Monica was charged as an accessory for allowing Robert to use her address to receive credit cards in Nadia's name. But the most satisfying moment came when Nadia received a call from Tiffany. "I thought you should know," Tiffany said. "Robert came to my apartment yesterday begging me to take him back." "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth. That I'm dating someone new, someone who actually has a job and treats me with respect. Someone who's never been married and doesn't come with crazy family baggage." "How did he take it?" "Not well. He said I owed him loyalty after everything he'd done for me. I reminded him that everything he'd done for me was with stolen money." "What's he doing now?" "Living in his car as far as I know. He can't rent an apartment because of his credit, and no one in his family can help him because they're all dealing with their own legal problems." After hanging up with Tiffany, Nadia felt a deep sense of completion. Robert had finally hit rock bottom and it was entirely his own doing. That weekend, she took Zoe and Grace to the farmer's market downtown. As they walked through the stalls of fresh produce and handmade crafts, Zoe spotted something that made her gasp. "Mommy, look." Across the square, sitting on a bench near the bus station, was Robert. He looked homeless, unshaven, dirty clothes, a backpack next to him that seemed to contain all his possessions. "Is that Daddy?" Zoe whispered. "Yes, sweetie." "He looks sad." "Yes, he does." Zoe studied her father for a long moment. "Should we help him?" Nadia knelt down to Zoe's level. "What do you think?" I think he made bad choices and now he has to fix them himself." "That's very wise, baby. But I still feel sorry for him." "It's okay to feel sorry for people even when they've hurt us. That shows you have a kind heart." As they walked away, Grace squeezed Nadia's hand. "She's going to be just fine. Better than fine. She's going to be strong and compassionate and wise. Just like her mother." That evening, as Nadia tucked Zoe into bed, her daughter asked one final question about her father. "Mommy, do you think Daddy will ever say he's sorry?" "I don't know, sweetheart. But it doesn't matter anymore." "Why not?" "Because we've already moved on. We're happy and safe and loved. Whether or not he apologizes doesn't change that." "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, baby. More than all the stars in the sky." As Nadia turned off the lights and headed downstairs, she reflected on the complete destruction of Robert and his family's plans. Patricia was in jail. Monica was facing financial ruin from the lawsuits and fines. Robert was homeless and facing serious prison time. They had tried to steal her life, abuse her family, and destroy everything she'd built. Instead, they had destroyed themselves completely. The final blow hadn't even come from Nadia. It had come from their own greed, their own stupidity, and their own inability to accept that their actions had consequences. Justice, Nadia thought, was sometimes its own reward. 1 year after finding Grace and Zoe frozen outside her own home, Nadia stood in the kitchen of her beautiful new house, watching her daughter help Grace make pancakes for breakfast. They had moved 6 months earlier, after Nadia received a promotion that came with a significant raise and the opportunity to work remotely most of the time. The new house was larger, in a better neighborhood, with a big backyard where Zoe could play safely. "Mommy, can we put chocolate chips in the pancakes?" Zoe asked, covered in flour but grinning. "Of course, baby." As they cooked together, Nadia's phone buzzed with a text from Thomas Wright. Robert sentenced to 8 years for identity theft and fraud. Patricia gets additional 2 years for conspiracy. Thought you'd want to know. Nadia smiled and deleted the message. That chapter of her life was over. What are you smiling about? Grace asked. Just thinking about how perfect this morning is. And it was perfect. Sunlight streamed through the windows of their new kitchen. Zoe was laughing as she flipped pancakes with Grace's help. The house smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, and the only sounds were happy ones. The doorbell rang and Zoe ran to answer it with Nadia close behind. Dr. Hamilton. Zoe squealed, throwing herself at the tall man standing on their porch. Marcus Hamilton was a pediatrician Nadia had met at a community health fair 3 months earlier. He was kind, intelligent, and most importantly, he adored both Zoe and Grace. Good morning, beautiful ladies, he said, hugging Zoe and kissing Nadia's cheek. Are those pancakes I smell? Grandma Grace is teaching me to make them from scratch. Zoe announced proudly. Well, I brought something to go with them, Marcus said, holding up a container of fresh strawberries from his garden. As they sat around the breakfast table, Nadia marveled at how natural this felt. Marcus asked Zoe about her upcoming school play, discussed Grace's knitting projects with genuine interest, and made everyone laugh with stories from his medical practice. Dr. Hamilton, Zoe said seriously, are you going to marry my mommy? Zoe. Nadia said, embarrassed. But Marcus just smiled. Well, I'd certainly like to if your mommy says yes someday. She should say yes, Zoe declared. You're much nicer than my daddy was. After breakfast, while Zoe played in the backyard and Grace worked on her knitting, Nadia and Marcus sat on the porch swing talking. Any word on the custody situation? Marcus asked. Robert missed his last 2 supervised visits. The caseworker thinks he might petition to give up his parental rights entirely. How does Zoe feel about that? She hasn't asked about him in months. Her therapist says she's processed the trauma really well, but she's also moved on emotionally. And how do you feel? Nadia thought about it. Relieved. Robert never really wanted to be a father. He wanted the idea of having a family but not the actual work of loving and protecting one. His loss is my gain, Marcus said, taking her hand. That afternoon they all went to the park together. As Nadia watched Marcus push Zoe on the swings while Grace fed ducks at the pond, she felt a contentment she'd never experienced before. Her phone rang, interrupting her peaceful thoughts. It was an unknown number which she normally wouldn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Nadia? This is Monica. Nadia felt her peaceful mood evaporate. What do you want? I wanted to apologize. For what specifically? For everything. For treating your mother and Zoe badly. For supporting Robert's affair. For trying to ruin your reputation online. Nadia was quiet for a long moment. Why now? Because I've had a lot of time to think about what we did. And because I wanted you to know that not all of us are proud of it. Are you expecting forgiveness? No. I just wanted you to know that we were wrong. All of us. And I'm sorry. After Monica hung up, Nadia sat on the park bench processing the call. Grace came and sat beside her. Who was that? Monica. She apologized. How do you feel about that? Honestly? Nothing. It doesn't change anything that happened and it doesn't undo the damage they caused. But I'm glad she finally understands how wrong they were. That evening, after Marcus had gone home and Zoe was asleep, Nadia and Grace sat in their comfortable living room, each reading a book. I have something to tell you, Grace said suddenly. What's that? Marcus asked me for permission to marry you. Nadia looked up from her book, surprised. When? Last week when you were at work. He came by and asked if he could speak with me privately. What did you tell him? I told him that he had my blessing, but more importantly, he needed yours and Zoe's. And what do you think about him? Grace smiled. I think he's exactly what our family needs. Someone who sees us as we are and loves us for it. I think so too. He's nothing like Robert. Thank God for that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Nadia? Yes. I'm proud of you. For fighting for us, for protecting us, and for building this beautiful new life. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. But I'm glad I got to be part of it. You're not just part of it, Mama Grace. You're the reason I fought so hard. You and Zoe are my world. As Nadia got ready for bed that night, she looked around her beautiful new bedroom. The walls were painted a soft blue, and photos of happy moments with her family covered the dresser. There were no painful memories here, no ghosts of betrayal. She thought about where she'd been a year ago, married to a man who was planning to replace her, supporting a family that despised her, working constantly to pay for a life that wasn't even real. Now she had a job she loved that allowed her to be home with her family. She had a man who respected and cherished all of them. She had a daughter who was thriving and happy. And she had peace. Robert and his family had tried to steal her life, but instead they had given her something better. They had forced her to recognize her own strength, to fight for what mattered, and to build something new and beautiful from the ashes of their destruction. As she drifted off to sleep in her own bed in her own house, surrounded by people who truly loved her, Nadia smiled. Victory had never tasted so sweet. 2 years after the divorce, Nadia stood in her backyard wearing a simple white dress, surrounded by the people who mattered most to her. Marcus looked handsome in his navy suit, his eyes never leaving her face as they exchanged vows they had written themselves. "I promise to love and protect not just you but the family you've built with such courage and grace," Marcus said, his voice steady but emotional. "I promise to be the father Zoe deserves and the son Grace has always wanted." When it was Nadia's turn, she looked out at the small gathering of friends and family, all people who had supported her through the darkest time of her life. "I promise to love you with the same fierce determination I used to protect my family," she said. "I promise to build a life with you based on honesty, respect, and joy." Zoe, now 7 and serving as their ring bearer, beamed as she handed over the wedding bands. Grace, sitting in the front row, wiped happy tears from her eyes. After they kissed and were pronounced husband and wife, the celebration moved to their beautifully decorated patio. The wedding was small but perfect, exactly what Nadia had always wanted but never thought she could have. "Mrs. Hamilton," Marcus whispered in her ear as they danced to their first song as a married couple, "how does it feel?" "Like coming home," she whispered back. As the evening wound down and their guests began to leave, Nadia found herself alone on the porch with Grace, watching Marcus and Zoe play catch in the yard. "He's going to officially adopt her, you know," Nadia said. "I know. She told me. She's very excited about it. She asked me yesterday if she could call him Dad." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that was between her and Marcus, but that I thought he'd be honored." They watched as Marcus scooped Zoe up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "She doesn't remember much about Robert anymore," Grace observed. "The therapist says that's normal for children her age. The trauma has faded and she's replaced those memories with happier ones." "Good. She deserves to remember being loved, not being hurt." As if sensing they were talking about him, Zoe ran over to the porch. "Mommy? Dad says we can go camping next weekend." Nadia's heart swelled hearing Zoe call Marcus Dad so naturally. "That sounds wonderful, baby. Can Grandma Grace come too?" "If she wants to." Grace laughed. "I'm too old for camping, sweetie. But you have fun with your parents." Later that night, after Zoe was asleep and the house was quiet, Nadia and Marcus sat in their bedroom talking about their future. "I got some interesting news today," Marcus said. "What kind of news?" "Robert's parole was denied. He'll serve his full sentence." Nadia felt nothing about this information. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness. Just nothing. "How do you feel about that?" Marcus asked, studying her face. "I don't feel anything. He's not part of our lives anymore." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd handled things differently?" Nadia thought about this. "You mean if I tried to save my marriage to him? Or if you'd been less thorough in your response to what they did? Then Grace and Zoe would still be at risk. And I'd still be married to a man who didn't love or respect me. No regrets. None. Robert and his family showed me exactly who they were. I believed them and responded accordingly. They certainly didn't expect you to fight back so effectively. They thought I was weak because I was kind. They learned the difference." Marcus pulled her closer. "Remind me never to get on your bad side. Just love my family and treat us well. That's all you have to do. That's the easiest promise I've ever made." The next morning, Nadia woke up as Mrs. Hamilton for the first time. The sun was streaming through their bedroom windows, and she could hear Zoe and Grace laughing in the kitchen. She found them making breakfast with Marcus, all 3 of them covered in flour and clearly having the time of their lives. "Good morning, Mrs. Hamilton," Marcus said, kissing her cheek. "Sleep well. Better than I have in years." "Mom, look. Dad's teaching me to make his special pancakes," Zoe announced. "They smell delicious." As they sat around the breakfast table, Nadia looked at each face, Marcus kind and steady, Grace happy and healthy, Zoe confident and joyful. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Her phone buzzed with a text from Thomas Wright. "Saw the wedding announcement in the paper. Congratulations. You deserve all the happiness in the world. She showed the message to Marcus, who smiled. He's right, you know. We all deserve happiness. We just had to fight for it. After breakfast, while Marcus took Zoe to soccer practice and Grace worked in her garden, Nadia sat in her home office answering work emails. She had been promoted again 6 months earlier and now managed a team of consultants. The work was challenging and fulfilling, and she rarely had to travel. Her computer chimed with a new email. When she saw the sender's name, she almost deleted it without reading it. But curiosity got the better of her. It was from Tiffany. Hi Nadia, the email read. I saw your wedding announcement and wanted to congratulate you. You look beautiful and happy. I also wanted to update you on my life. I finished nursing school last year and got married to a wonderful man who teaches elementary school. We're expecting our first baby in the fall. I know this is strange, but I wanted to thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. You taught me that I deserved better than what Robert was offering. I hope you and your family continue to be blessed with happiness. Tiffany. Nadia read the email twice, then smiled and typed a brief response. Congratulations on your marriage and pregnancy. I'm glad you found happiness. Best wishes for your future. It felt good to close that chapter with grace rather than anger. That afternoon, the whole family went to the farmer's market together. As they walked through the stalls, Nadia marveled at how different her life was from just 2 years ago. 2 years ago, she had been struggling to save a marriage that was already dead, supporting a family that hated her, and working constantly to pay for a life built on lies. Now she was married to a man who cherished her, surrounded by people who loved her genuinely, and living a life built on truth and mutual respect. What are you thinking about? Marcus asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Just how perfect this moment is. Even with Zoe arguing with Grace about which apples to buy? Nadia laughed, looking at her daughter and mother good-naturedly debating the merits of different apple varieties. Especially with that. As they drove home that evening, Zoe fell asleep in the back seat. Grace dozed in the passenger seat. Marcus drove quietly, occasionally reaching over to squeeze Nadia's hand. I love you, he said softly. I love you too. All of you. This whole beautiful, crazy family. We love you too. More than you know. That night, after everyone was asleep, Nadia stepped out onto her back porch and looked up at the stars. The air was warm, filled with the scent of Grace's flowers and the sound of crickets chirping. 2 years ago, she had been a woman whose life was falling apart. Tonight, she was a woman whose life was exactly what she had always dreamed it could be. Robert and his family had tried to destroy her, but instead they had forced her to become stronger, braver, and more determined than she had ever imagined possible. They had tried to steal her life, but they had actually given her a better one. As she headed back inside to join her sleeping family, Nadia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. It had been painful, difficult, and sometimes terrifying. But it had also been necessary. Sometimes she thought the best thing that can happen to you is having people show you exactly who they are. Because once you know the truth, you can stop wasting time on people who don't deserve you and start building a life with people who do. She turned off the porch light and locked the door behind her, sealing out the past and embracing the future. Her future was bright, her family was safe, and her heart was full. This was what victory looked like, not the destruction of her enemies, but the construction of something beautiful from the ashes of their betrayal. This was what new beginnings felt like. And it was everything she had ever wanted.